Here's a very super basic one, very pickup-y. What's your advice for guys who don't even know what to say to a woman?
What advice to guys who don't know what to say?
Yeah, so guys who are
Is that what you asked?
um so lonely,
Mm,
so unsociable, so introverted that they don't even
mm,
know what to say to a woman and can't really imagine themselves. Well, they can kind of want to talk to
mm.
women, but they just don't know what to say.
Yeah. Well, the problem is really is I always tell guys the more honest you get, the more you know what to say. So the issue is that guys don't know what to say because they're trying to think of something to say. And when you're trying to think of something to say, what you're essentially doing is that you're trying to come up with something that you think the woman is gonna be interested in so that she can like reciprocate and show that she's interested. Talk about what you want and then say that. So I always encourage guys to practice being honest with women and letting them know exactly what they're trying to do so that even when a woman rejects them or a woman's not interested or not trying to make anything happen, what happens is that they get into the habit or the mode of just being themselves and being who they are and not worry about the response. Because no matter what you say, there's going to be women who are not going to be interested. Right. So it's better to say what you want and be honest and then be able to get a response that's more authentic to what you actually want. So a lot of times the issue of not knowing what to say just really stems from being afraid of rejection and trying to think of something to say that's clever so that you won't get rejected. You see what I'm saying? So I just tell them be as honest as possible. So even for example, like a, a dude might approach a woman and I actually said he said this literally. He said, I'm probably butchering a few words, but he basically said, hey, miss, I came up to you because I thought you was very attractive. I'll be honest with you, I'm really nervous because I usually don't do this, but I just wanted to let you know you look real sexy in those jeans, and I think we should get together and hang out sometime. And then so the girl was like laughing about it, and she was, interested in the exchange information. So he was just honest about everything. He said, "Yo, listen, I'm nervous. I think you're hot. We should get together." And that's all. That's literally all he said. And then he was like, "Let's get, exchange numbers." They exchanged numbers, and they made it happen. So it's not really as complicated as guys like to make it. It's more so you just
Yeah.
got to be honest and have the courage to do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying?
This has been a debate, right? That's something people have been having for a long time. And probably the origin of the debate was number one, men having approach anxiety. And number two, when the pickup artistry started, let's go back to the game and mystery. I interviewed mystery last week on my show. They believed in canned routines. And canned
Mm-hmm.
routines, I think, were like training wheels for a lot of them. But canned routines, like Locario is saying, what it does is it avoids ultimate honesty and putting yourself out there for rejection. One of the problems that I've had with the pickup community over the last, couple decades is the concept of like always reframing rejection. Lucario just said, sometimes girls just aren't into you, but take that rejection with zero emotion and just be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. This didn't work for me. But also notice when you dress better, when your teeth are straight, when you speak at a lower register, when you maintain masculine frame, and when you have more upper body muscle, notice how more girls are actually interested in you. There's like a group of women. I remember one time I shaved my head. It was like a couple years ago. I shaved my head and I noticed there was a group of women that just weren't interested in me anymore. They didn't like it anymore. But then there was a separate group of women that were like super interested in me because I shaved my head. Those things are different. Same thing with like the tattoo sleeves. There's things that you can do. There's attributes that you can do to improve yourself. But at the same time, don't always reframe rejection. This is a really bad thing where dudes are like laying down in the middle of the street or they're eating food off. You guys seen this before? The guys who like won't shower for 60 days, the pickup artists that do this. Like
Wow, that's
that stuff is like they're so invested in completely reframing rejection instead of accepting rejection. You remember those three things I said about accomplishing goals: the present moment awareness, the full and total acceptance that, hey, this girl likes me or this girl doesn't like me. I'm just not good enough. I've tried to get on certain people's podcasts. They never wrote me back. Fuck. They left me on scene. I need to fully accept, okay, this is where I am in the world, have no resistance or no total and complete acceptance of that idea. When you do that, it's a lot easier. And when you do that, it's funny because what Lucario talking about, that happened for me 2006, my dad was killed by a drunk driver. In '08, I read this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And then when I came to that realization that, hey, listen, we're all going to die, none of this really matters, a total and complete honesty was so much more available to me. And I felt like that was probably the most attractive I've ever been, is when I can be that level of honest. So, but here's the thing. So the idea of canned routines, I get why people wanted to do it and why that was so, what's the word I'm looking for? So appealing. I think it's fine if the canned routine is like, one of my favorite things to ask a girl in Vegas is like, hey, do you live here? Do you live in Vegas? Is like, because if they don't live in Vegas, that's a very different answer than if they do. Then if I was in Brooklyn, I would do the same thing. Like, you from Brooklyn? And then we could just get into the point where we're talking. But it's just one of these things where it's like, the things that you talk about, for me, one of the things that I try to get to quickly is if I go up and talk to a girl, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, some logistical question. And then I'm going to be like, hey, I just wanted to come up and talk to you because I'm curious. Although this is the only difference. I generally don't say I'm curious because of something that's physically attractive about her. What I'm going to say is, you seem interesting because of this, or some other reason, just because I do think you can still manufacture attraction. There is a seduction process that you can go through with some women. But the ultimate honesty that you can have, and then being in the present moment and not thinking about the next thing to say, I think is way more attractive to women.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like, when I was going to say real quick is that sometimes what happens is, the more you talk to women and the more you're out there doing what you do, the more you're going to hear similar like conversation threads, and you're going to hear similar responses. And so what happens is that sometimes when you hear similar responses from women, right, then you usually will have a similar thing you would say to those responses. So a lot of times when the pickup artists would do the canned routines and stuff, right, what happened is they had like a story or whatever to say, if they run out of something to say or whatever like that. But what happens is, what's even more beneficial is when you're talking to a woman and like she's saying something to you that you've heard 10 different times from 10 different women. And then you've responded this way to those women. And then 90% of the time, you always get this response back. So a lot of times when you're talking to more and more women, you start to see patterns in conversations. You see what I'm saying? And then so what happens is that once you pick up on that and you say, oh, well, last time I said this to this girl, when this same exact type of conversation came up, and this ended up being this type of situation. So then you can just use that over and over again. You see what I'm saying? Because you're going to find out that it's going to come back up, and you just, add that into the conversation.
Yeah. You just start developing neural pathways for every type of response. This is like a guy who plays quarterback in the NFL for 10 years. After a while, he's seen every blitz there is. He knows every coverage there is. That's what happens when you go up and talk to women for a lot of time. So a lot of people will be like, well, that's not authentic. That's canned. Well, it's not really canned. It's just like humans have adaptations to do things that are better for themselves. Right. And over time, when you talk to a lot of women, you start realizing, hey, man, when I talk about these subjects, women seem to get way more turned on. And when I talk about these subjects, they tend to not get turned on. And you find that with a ton of experience. But I'll tell you one other, this just massive cheat code. If you have a hot girl with you, and you go up and talk to some girl, you can say whatever the fuck you want. They're never going to reject you. It's one of the biggest cheat codes there is. So I recommend guys would try what Locario says, where he's like, you go up and you're just like total and complete honesty. But here's the thing. It's not just honesty. It's complete outcome independence. Right. And then I also recommend try going out with a super hot girl and then just watch the way women react to you. You get to skip several levels when you do that.
Mm-hmm.